Okay. So I don't really know where the direction of this channel is going. I wanted to put some positive content out on the internet about physiotherapy and just sort of managing my EDS symptoms. I wanted to cook some healthy recipes. I haven't put any recipe videos up yet. I wanted to make some nice smoothies and healthy juices. There's a couple of those on this channel. I feel like my channel has swung more into a EDS advocacy like type of direction, which was not my intention. I think it's important, and I know a lot of the videos or the topics that I put up on my channel recently have been quite sort of heavy. So I'm wanting to balance that out soon with a closet clear out video. I'm going to try on the clothes, the dresses in my closet and see if I still suit them, if they still fit me, if I enjoy wearing them, and if they can look good standing up and while sitting down in wheelchairs. So I'm gonna have a big closet clear out of stuff that I haven't cleared out since I was like 15, 16 years old. There's like my sister's clothes here. I brought back some of my mum's old clothes from Sweden that she didn't want anymore, so I have an abundance of recycled clothing from people and just stuff that I've bought at op shops and things, and then a few really nice pieces that are good quality fabric and from brands that I really like their design and I want to support their work. So it's always nice to have a few new like quality pieces that you love. We're going to do a clothes swap with a few of my old work colleagues from the gallery, and it'll be really nice to see everyone and do that, and it's a good way of just recycling clothing or finding a new home for stuff that doesn't suit you as much anymore, and then whatever people don't take from that clothes swap, we'll just donate it. And then I also want to film a video about how we've adapted the space that we have at the moment, how I've moved everything in and organised it so that it suits mine and Richard's needs, and yeah, kind of how I've like decided to organise or adapt things so that they work for me. Yeah, I'm definitely wanting to put out some more positive videos that are just, you know, lifestyle type content, like following me around for a day in the life, like a vlog. There's a couple of things that have happened lately that have prompted me to sort of do this video. I recently had like a not so amazing experience in hospital, made me feel kind of burnt out with dealing with the medical system. It sometimes feels like you put so much energy and time into trying to get better and get what you need, and that the system itself is just sometimes moves at a snail's pace. There's lots of bureaucracy. And it's not always easy to get your needs met. There are things that have happened to my friends in the community lately that have affected me. People with the same sort of subtype of EDS as me, and that sort of triggered a little bit of my anxiety around certain things with EDS. I also strongly believe that if you see an injustice happen, if you don't sort of speak up about it and, you know, talk about it, then you're sort of part of...
Oh.
Hi. It's okay.
Can you cut that bit out?
Yeah,
Oh,
cut it out.
Okay, darling. Do you not want some side lights on there to just illuminate your face?
You can open that curtain up if you...
Bye.
Bye. There's definitely going to be some more positive lifestyle content coming out, like just vlog style, relaxed, following me around in a day in the life type of stuff. But yeah, I believe that it's really important. If you see an injustice or there's something that's important to you, that you sort of make your voice heard, speak up about it, so that you're not contributing to like kind of this taboo or culture of silence around discussing certain topics that basically enables people to continue to dismiss medical concerns or dismiss people that have rare conditions or not address things that they don't want to address. These things that have happened in my community, the EDS community, recently have prompted me to make this video. Obviously, like I think most of my viewers are like in New Zealand, so perhaps some of you have read the recent article that came out in the Herald that Stephanie Aston had died. So the headline that the Herald used was "Woman accused of faking her illness has died." Stephanie is someone that I interacted with on the internet. I used to have a chronic illness account that I deleted, but I followed a lot of people with EDS on there, and she followed me, and it was sort of like this little community of people that could exchange information, talk about supplements that were good or that they'd found useful, perhaps doctors that specialised in a certain area. I know that this type of information and this type of content has really helped me in the past. And so I guess I'm just wanting to pay that forward. The online community, the EDS community, has had some tough things happen lately. So yeah, Stephanie passing away is definitely one of them. But I didn't know her that well, and the thing that gets me is hearing all of the injustice that she was subjected to when she was just trying to live the best life possible. And she was such a caring and thoughtful person, always trying to answer people's questions, show them understanding in what they were going through. I don't think she would mind her experience being used or discussed in this way if it will bring more awareness to EDS, if it can help doctors question their practices around EDS, if it could help the government or whatever hospital organisations are in charge of how much budget certain illnesses get within the healthcare system, and make them put in place new sort of guidelines of how to deal with EDS patients, or to allow rheumatology or genetics, for example, a budget for specifically EDS patients and treating them, because currently the rheumatology department, which EDS kind of falls under rheumatology as a specialty because it's a connective tissue disorder, rheumatology in New Zealand currently doesn't have any budget to deal with Ehlers Danlos Syndrome patients. Even in other countries, it is difficult to get diagnosed with it, but New Zealand in particular is a smaller country, so there would be less people with EDS here. And our medical system, I guess, moves at sort of a glacial pace. I'm not sure why they haven't adapted and conferred with overseas medical institutions and updated their practices, but in New Zealand, EDS still seems to be this very rare thing that barely anyone would have, and doctors don't really get trained on how to identify it, what to do if you come into contact with a person with EDS, how you can be helpful to them, who you can refer them to, what procedures and what practices and what ways of doing things could do harm to people with EDS. And because it's, a multi-systemic issue, you have people with EDS can have lots of different varied issues, and it can look very different. And unfortunately, with Stephanie, who was so sick, she got accused of having fictitious disorder, which is just one form of medical gaslighting, basically saying that her issues were too complex and too varied to fall under the umbrella of anything that the hospital system deals with, and they thought it was easier to write her off and say that she was causing her symptoms, or that she wanted to be sick, or that she was mentally ill. And that's just very discouraging. But Stephanie is just one of many people with Ehlers Danlos Syndrome in New Zealand that has been denied fair medical treatment. Perhaps they wouldn't have gotten so sick, and it's to the point where some people in their 20s and 30s have passed away. There's a good website that I will leave a link to in the description called Ruby's Voice Trust, all about some of the rarer, more complicated conditions that can come along with EDS, such as gastroparesis, which is essentially an issue with the electrical impulses in your stomach. So it's very similar to how an electrical impulse will go throughout your heart, and that will activate the muscles in your heart to pump the blood. It's very similar with your stomach. You have electrical impulses that allow your stomach to twist and move food through your intestines and through your system and digest it and absorb nutrients. And for some reason, people with EDS who have defective collagen, their stomach muscles and their movements are not working properly. They're either paralyzed, gastroparesis literally translates to paralyzed stomach, or some of the electrical patterns and impulses are not occurring in the right rhythm or in the right way to digest food properly. You may even have some impulses that force food to go up the wrong way. So instead of your electrical impulses and your muscles pushing food down, it's instead pushing food up, making it impossible for you to digest it and get nutrients from it. And a lot of people with this condition have been accused of having anorexia, different types of eating disorders, and even still, people that do have anorexia deserve to have, the help they need and receive care or nutrition if they need it. But, regardless, gastroparesis is different from anorexia. It's not something that people that have it are doing to themselves. It is completely a physical thing. And unfortunately, because there's been so little understanding around that young people can have this condition, people with EDS or postural orthostatic tachycardia or different sort of autonomic issues can have it. And many people in the medical system believe that it's only older people, people that have had diabetes for years and have some type of neuropathy issue that get these conditions, and that's not true. For people with EDS, the signals sent from the brain to digest the food and to get the stomach muscles going, the wires get crossed somewhere, and possibly because of the defective collagen, those signals don't reach the right place and carry out the right function. So it's just so discouraging to me that there could be people in New Zealand living with a known condition, and there's not necessarily any way of diagnosing gastroparesis when it's at the early stages. When it's at the later stages, you can see it on a gastric emptying scan. There are new technologies being developed, and I took part in a clinical trial where you have electrodes put onto your stomach, similar to an EKG, and they measure the impulses or the muscle movements in your stomach, and they track that and see if it falls within a normal pattern and rhythm. And if it doesn't, that should be physical evidence, a test that should be able to confirm whether someone has gastroparesis or not, so that they don't get lumped in with other issues that are not related to EDS or gastroparesis. I know that Stephanie had a feeding tube for a while. I think her main issue, because she had vascular EDS, was hemorrhaging and bleeding and aneurysms and ruptured blood vessels and things like that. And so it's just mind-boggling to me how she could have had a genetic test that confirmed that she had vascular EDS. She could have had hemorrhaging, which is impossible to fake, but somehow, because one misinformed medical professional decided to label her with fictitious disorder and medically gaslight her, other doctors don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole, and it perpetuates this injustice. This is, part of the reason why I want to talk about medical gaslighting. I've experienced it, only to a very small extent compared to some people with EDS. I feel very lucky. It was more fatigue for me at first. I was misdiagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome. I think chronic fatigue syndrome is really sort of just an umbrella diagnosis of conditions that cause fatigue, and they are not quite sure what's wrong with you. So I was lumped into that category to begin with, and then as I started having more heart issues and dislocations and different things with my digestion, and it sounded more and more like EDS, I started to look into that sort of 2 years into my journey of discovering chronic illness. And from that point onwards, from when I started looking into EDS to when I had a diagnosis, it was about 2 years. And I got that diagnosis confirmed by a geneticist. Even if you have a subtype that the gene hasn't been discovered yet, a specialist or a geneticist should be able to diagnose you just based on clinical information and the history you give them and how you present. So I've got my phone with some notes on it just to keep me on track of what I want to read out. And this is a good tip as well when it comes to combating medical gaslighting, is have a list of things that you want to talk about with your doctor to make sure that they get addressed, or if they don't get addressed this time, at least you have a record of it. I want to think about what are some concrete strategies that you can use to make it more difficult for professionals to medically gaslight you. What are some things that you can do to have your voice heard and to be able to get the care that you want and need? And even if it's like an issue where it's like, oh, you have heart palpitations and that could be anxiety, or you have shortness of breath and that could be anxiety, you still have a right to have other medical possibilities ruled out and investigated before you accept that it's an anxiety diagnosis, for example. Should we define what medical gaslighting is? Maybe I should have started with this. Let's define what medical gaslighting is. Basically, it's the repeated denial of someone's experience or reality in an attempt to dismiss them or not have to address their concerns. So it's a repeated denial of someone's experience or reality. So to that person, they're experiencing something, it's a fact. Doctors could use medical gaslighting to convince them that their issues are in their head, what they're experiencing is not a physical issue. They can question the person in order to make them doubt themselves and make them feel like their experience or what they think, their opinion, is somehow wrong, not true, misinformed. And you know your body best, you know what's happening for you, so it's important that you're able to hold on to that. So something that happens very often to people that might have postural orthostatic tachycardia, which is a condition that comes along with Ehlers Danlos Syndrome, is they might describe fast heart rate, heart palpitations, and if you live with an invisible illness and you're a relatively young woman who looks healthy, a doctor will often skip any physical investigations, skip any testing like a Holter monitor or an EKG, and they might take your pulse and just say, you know, it's probably anxiety, why don't you try some anxiety medication, and sort of dismiss you and dismiss your concerns. That's not okay because it makes you feel dismissed, it makes you feel not heard, it can make you more cautious of seeking help or what you tell people or doctors in the future because you've been sort of dismissed in the past. You have a right to get your concerns seen to, and if you want to have medical issues ruled out as an option or as a problem, you deserve to have that done. I feel like I've got kind of this like angry sort of energy in this video, like I am having a difficult time like just being real with it and acknowledging my emotions around it because it feels so unjust and so unfair that someone living with a genuine condition that's causing them issues in their life could go to a medical service and interact with a doctor trying to get help for their needs that they need to get met, and that they could be dismissed, misdiagnosed, doubting themselves and feeling misunderstood and isolated. But the shame of saying I think something's wrong with me, being vulnerable and asking for help, and then being questioned and dismissed is damaging, you know? Like, it can make you not want to interact with the medical system in the same way. It can make you scared to seek help. It can make you afraid to talk to other people about what you're going through. And medical neglect is just as abusive as malpractice. Like, if you have a condition and that's not being seen to, that neglect, you know, can eventually lead to death, as has happened with some people in the EDS community. I'm well aware that there's like no cure for EDS, or there's different types of EDS that are like more lethal than others, or people will die from complications because of EDS, and there's not anything that can be done by that. But it's like in these cases where maybe something could have been done, something could have been prevented, if someone listened to these people and took them seriously from the beginning, it's just so heartbreaking to think that other people with these same concerns could go to a doctor trying to get help and be dismissed, and that could lead to worse health outcomes for them because they do in fact have a physical condition that is being written off. It can eventually lead to, you know, like medical PTSD or trauma, where people are so used to interacting with a health system that is dysfunctional and doesn't work for them that they get PTSD or trauma from having to deal with it. And I wouldn't say I've experienced that, but I've definitely had periods of burnout where I'm just discouraged and I just don't want to deal with it anymore, and I just want to get on with my life because it doesn't seem to be helping and no one seems to understand or want to listen or do anything. There's enough of the trying to understand what medical gaslighting is and why it's a problem, and I think we've established that. Here are some things that you can do to avoid it in the future. If a doctor recommends a procedure to you, or they recommend a certain therapy or drug and you haven't looked into it enough yet, or you don't agree with them, or you don't think it would be beneficial to you, you have a right to say no. You don't have to go through with that. Their job is to inform you, and it's your job to take that information in, hold on to your reality, and make a decision that you think would be right for you, considering your needs and your circumstances. And it's okay to have differing opinions. It's alright to have a differing opinion from another doctor. See them for certain aspects of your care, but if you have a differing opinion on something, you don't need to talk to them about that. Or, I'm not advocating for doctor shopping or anything, but you are allowed to get a second opinion. If you have a different opinion than your doctor, you can seek out a second opinion and see what that doctor has to say. The other thing is, I think many people view healthcare as like a privilege. It shouldn't be a privilege, it's a right. It's a right for you to get your needs and concerns addressed, and obviously in a perfect world that would happen for everyone all the time. We are limited by our systems and institutions and the way that doctors are trained and the way that they present information or carry out their job. What really helped me change my perspective when it came to dealing with medical professionals and doctors is that they are there to help you. They are a service that you interact with in order to get what you need. And just like any other service, if the service you are receiving is not up to your standards, if it's not what you wanted, if you feel like it may even be harmful, you totally have a right to leave and to seek help somewhere else. Okay, here's another helpful thing that I think is why I received my EDS diagnosis after quite a short time after having my first few symptoms of it, which I think is like relatively rare. I basically built up a record or a paper trail of how things were progressing for me and how things happened. So have your doctor write down what you're experiencing in your doctor's notes. If your doctor does want to take your symptoms seriously or write certain things down, you should have like a symptom diary, record your symptoms, show them if there's a pattern, and have them record that. It could be printing out, referrals. It can be printing out letters that you've received from doctors. It can be keeping a copy of test results and making sure that you have a hard copy of them and an electronic copy of them. Make sure that the information that they give you is accurate, you have it filed away and stored, and you have it recorded somewhere. With future appointments and things, you'll be able to refer doctors to that information and they will be able to see objective data, objective test results, or a history taken by a medical professional of what's happened to you, and that will definitely be more convincing to them if they are judging you based on whatever demographic you're a part of or stereotypes. So that can help to combat some of that. The other thing I've done as well is when I have a dislocation, I try to take a photo of it when it happens and record it. And sometimes if I don't want to make a medical appointment and have to pay for a whole medical appointment just because of a shoulder injury or something, if you have your doctor's email, or if you can call the reception, or the reception has an email, just send them the photo and be like, hi, I just wanted to have this added to my file or recorded. The other thing you can do is request your medical records. That's some advice that I got from the Health and Advocacy Group and the Ombudsman when I was recently in hospital, and they couldn't find the document from my geneticist with my diagnosis of EDS, which I don't know how it's not all just integrated in one big database. Maybe it is. I'm not sure how the system works, if it's like different DHBs have different records, or if everyone in Auckland shares records, or what's happening with that. I know we've now shifted to like a national health system, so I think most doctors should be able to go and search up your NHI number and get most medical records. But you do have a right to request your medical records from any hospital. You might have to sign a form to be allowed to see your records, but it's definitely your right to be able to see those medical records and read what people have written about you, and if the information is accurate in there and if it's not. Likewise, the Health and Advocacy Service said that I am able to submit documentation to them so that they have that on record. So if for some reason they couldn't find my diagnosis because perhaps, I don't know, the genetic health service or something is separate from the hospitals or the DHBs. I don't know why that would be. It seems to be under your NHI number, so I don't know what's up with that, but maybe there's like private information because it's like to do with genetics and genetic health information. I can then submit my document from the genetic health service, which my doctor has written that she's confirmed my diagnosis of EDS in that, and no one can dispute that, and I can then submit that to the hospitals so they know that I have it, and they know that it's not something that can be disputed, and it's something that needs to be taken into account with my treatment. I haven't done that yet. I'm going to do that. I'm going to request all my medical records from the different hospitals I've stayed at, and I'm going to submit my documents from the genetic health service everywhere just to make sure that everyone has that. But it blows my mind that I would have to do that, and it's not something that they can just like look up and see, or that they wouldn't take my word for it if I'm telling them this, that I'm being questioned, that it's what documentation do you have to support that, which specialist have you seen, and the more specialists that you can get to confirm your diagnosis that are respected within their different specialties, the more seriously I think they'll take you. And I think I was very lucky to get a well-respected cardiologist when it came to postural orthostatic tachycardia. That has definitely been an advantage to me, having private like healthcare insurance and being able to be seen by a cardiologist privately or a gastroenterologist privately if the public health system doesn't want to address my needs. And it breaks my heart for the people that only have the public health system as an option. I mean, I've got a European passport, I've even considered moving overseas or getting a visa to go to the UK because places in Europe have EDS clinics and the treatment seems to be just so much more comprehensive and further ahead than it is here. And I mean, it makes sense in a big city like London with a huge population that you would have more people with EDS there, and therefore you'd have more specialists and more studies and more work happening around that there. But for now, I'm happy in New Zealand. Me and Richard are looking at moving to Europe in the near future or in the next few years. Regardless, it doesn't matter where you live, it doesn't matter which hospital or healthcare system you interact with, you should be getting fair and comprehensive medical treatment. Another thing you can do if you say have an appointment and you have a list of things, of say 5 things you wanted to talk to them about, some might be more important than others, or I do understand that, you know, if you have a shorter appointment, maybe they can't address all of your concerns that you have that day. But if your concerns feel urgent to you and you want them to be addressed, or you want to prioritize one concern over another and a doctor's trying to brush that off, is to say, could you please record in my chart that I have this and this and this and this concern, and you're only wanting to address this one. Many times they won't want to write that down in the chart, so then they will make an effort to address what you would like to have addressed in that appointment. But if they don't, you have a record of when these symptoms or when these issues started in your chart, and you can request all of that from your GP as well. I'd like to end on 2 things. Just read my notes, and there's two more things I'd like to talk about. And that is the process that you as a bystander can go through if you see an injustice happening to someone. And it does just make such a big difference. Even if there's a whole room of people doubting you and one person speaks up, if you see an injustice happen, there's sort of 3 steps towards alerting people to this or trying to make it stop. First of all, when you see the injustice, speak up, say you object to them doing that, make your voice heard, make sure people see and know that you object to what's happening. Second, and this step I feel often gets ignored, and I guess it's what I'm trying to bring attention to in this video, and it's what I'm trying to validate. Attend to the person that's been harmed or the person that's been neglected or had their reality denied. That can leave a lasting impression on them, and it can be so powerful for them if they just have one person say, hey, I saw what happened there. That was unjust. That was unfair. Don't doubt yourself. You're not the problem. I can see what's going on, and I'm sorry you went through that. And the third thing is, you know, if there is a higher authority that you can report it to, report it, because that is the only way that the systems that we interact within change. So it's always a 3-step process. I think when we see an injustice happen, we often just think, you know, like, oh God, that's so unfair, or oh, that situation's so uncomfortable, or oh, that sucks for that person, or we get frightened that like, oh, if an injustice is being carried out towards them, will people be unjust towards me? Will people be dismissive towards me? Like, will I seem crazy if I speak up against this person? I think if you don't want to be a part of the problem, you do have to speak out. Alright, coming to the last point of this long video. Don't let a medical professional or anyone convince you that your opinion is wrong. If they have new information, if they have a different opinion, you can examine that and see if there's a valid reason there to change your own opinion. Without that, people can just push opinions onto you or make decisions for you. And when it comes to your body, your health, what you're experiencing, it's important that you have an idea around what's happening with that. Think for yourself, examine the information, and often you will be able to make the best choice for you. As I said, it wasn't my intention to be making this type of content. I've just had a few things happen lately, like seeing this stuff about Stephanie in the news yesterday. She passed away on the 1st of September. Being aware of other people in the community who are in some really difficult situations at the moment. A friend that I've met up with, and we've spent some time in hospital together, and I had her give a little page up on my Instagram to try help fundraise for surgery that she needs. And there's a few people in the community at the moment that have vascular compressions that are causing really, really debilitating symptoms for them and could cause some fatal complications. The fact that we don't even have some of the medical equipment in this country to diagnose these conditions, or the public health system doesn't have funding to diagnose these conditions. There aren't any specific specialists or departments that are supposed to deal with this. You sort of get bounced around from different people, and that can be really discouraging. And I think recently there was one sort of radiology group or clinic in the Waikato that does ultrasounds and things, like with the Doppler ultrasound technology, that is able to diagnose vascular compressions in people. But again, you would probably have to go to them privately. You might have to get referred by a certain specific type of doctor. There's long waiting lists, and unfortunately people will try to make money out of just about any situation, so they understand that there's a scarcity of help for these people, and that not many people or clinics have this technology, and that the public health system is not... I can't think today, my brain has gone to mush. That the public health system doesn't have the equipment to deal with this issue. So that specific radiology clinic in the Waikato is now charging an arm and a leg because there is demand from people with EDS to have these investigations around if they have vascular compressions or not. And several of the people that have been diagnosed or have the symptoms have been referred to a surgeon in Germany that has had great success at helping people with resolving these vascular compressions through repositioning veins and arteries or putting stents in the arteries. But obviously that is like hugely risky surgery in itself. It can't be done in New Zealand, and it costs 180 to 200,000. Many people have been quoted for the travel, the hospital stay, like all of the costs that people will incur going over there and trying to have the surgery done. And for some people it's life or death, you know, they might not have a good quality of life or live much longer without that surgery, but there is no option to have it here in New Zealand. I think there needs to be some change. It's not okay that there is a whole group of people that aren't being heard, aren't having their needs met, and it's negligence, it's abusive, and we need to do better. We need to speak out so that we can change our systems here. And that doesn't mean that, you know, you can cure everything or everything goes away, but it just means that people have a fighting chance and their life is not cut short. And I think medical gaslighting factors into that hugely. A lot of people are ignorant to a lot of things, but when an issue is presented to you and the evidence is so convincing that something needs to change or happen, I don't understand how people can remain ignorant to that. Please think for yourself, do your own research, and make up your own opinion on these issues. Okay, I'm gonna stop there.